Grand Rising. Good evening, greetings, everyone. Welcome to Real Talk, Reshaping Motherhood. You're tuned into the Power to Our Mothers Foundation Africa and Speak Up and Empower Africa platforms. So welcome this Monday, the 26th of April. Please do two things for me. Please drop a comment and let me know where in the world you are joining us from. It's always good to know who we're connected with. And also just take another few seconds to, if you're on Facebook, do like and follow the pages, or on YouTube, please do subscribe and share the channels. So like I said, you are tuned into Real Talk, Reshaping Motherhood, brought to you by Power to Our Mothers Foundation Africa and Speak Up and Empower Africa. Shout out to Speak Up and Empower, which is a partner of Power to Our Mothers Foundation Africa. And Speak Up and Empower is all about, it's a Canadian-based, essentially, organization, which is focused, a heartfelt even online community focused on building relationships, communities, businesses, you name it, but all with a view to helping people create the dreams they would love to create. So a big shout out to them. So today, if you're joining us for the first time, as you can see, my name is Naa Amerley Asante-Armar. I am your host for today, and I'm super thrilled to be rejoined by my guest from last week, Sister Ursula Ngonadi of BLKMailTV, or 50% of BLKMailTV. And as we get back into, or get really into our discussion of the importance, or maybe my summary or my paraphrase, like the importance of raising African children or children of African descent on the motherland of Africa.
Yes.
So first, let's go back and give Sister Ursula a warm virtual welcome. Welcome, Sister Ursula.
Hey, sis. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's been really hot today. I shall not complain. I've had a lovely day.
No, don't.
Sending you sunshine, sending you heat from Ghana.
Thank you. We're receiving all of it.
You look like you're dressed for the weather. You look beautiful.
Well, I have to make an effort for you, of course.
Thank you very much. And please just take a minute or so. Let's remind the viewers, Sister Ursula is a mother, coach, and entrepreneur, among many things. But do speak a little bit about what you do, specifically from the BLKMailTV side, because it's like a tree with many branches.
It is indeed. Thank you, sis. Well, like you said, my name's Ursula Ngonadi. I'm one half of BLKMailTV, and that is something which I set to put up together with my husband Franklin. And essentially, BLKMailTV, we work off the principles of our personal family's life equations of LSG, which is love plus support equals growth every time. So these are principles to which, like I said, we apply within our marriage, within how we raise our children. And it's something to which, when we established BLKMailTV as a brand, we spearheaded it with that. And so BLKMailTV, we're all about one Africa, one voice. So we're all about, dispelling like the negative myths that have been placed on Africa. And also being the fact that my husband and I were born on the continent, raised in the West, we understand about, the diasporans and the link and wanting to go back to Africa. So very much BLKMailTV, it's about promoting that. But what we do heavily is we promote businesses, small to medium-sized businesses. We help to gain them that visibility, because as you know, our community, our people, we are great entrepreneurs, we're great business people, we're creatives, but we just don't have that online visibility. So what essentially we try to do is to give a spotlight to businesses, and just essentially to people which are living LSG lifestyle, doing that, supporting people, loving people. And we're essentially, through BLKMailTV, we've developed a growth community where everybody essentially is family, where we connect with one another. We've gone off connections from social media to where we generally interact with each other's lives daily. And we're seeing growth within our lives, within our businesses. So once again, BLKMailTV, love for support equals growth. So essentially that is the BLKMailTV side of things.
And then you also a mummy of three.
Yes, I am. I am. I
So
am.
I
I
take it
am.
very busy.
Yes, children do keep you very busy, but I'll be very honest with you, sis. I'm a mom, I'm a mom. At the point of which having children, I was ready for children. I've always been very orientated towards children. I'm a teacher myself, I come from a background of, teaching children, young children. So there's always been that connection. So being a mom is great. And, especially as I have the opportunity to homeschool my children and, have the opportunity to really impart wisdom and, like I said, our life skills onto them, imparting like education and knowledge which they can apply in life. That's what's really important, for us as a mum, which is what leads to obviously the topic which we're speaking about, why I think children should be raised on the continent.
Yeah, so do tell me, because I mean, I, as well, for the viewers, so I was born and bred in the UK, so I lived there most of my, to my 40s, and have been living in Ghana now for what, like 7.5 months, and the boys are here, and there is some adjustment to be made, but my we got to the point, my ex-husband and I got to the point where we did, well, he always felt that, yeah, at some point, they should, we should send them to school here. And then I got to the stage where actually all roads led or leads to Ghana for a number of different reasons. So maybe we can address that. We will probably touch on that in what you want to say. So from your perspective, what is it that, why is it important? I guess, what is it about the importance for you about raising African children, or I'll say children of African descent, on the continent of Africa?
I'll be honest that obviously there's many reasons and it's multifaceted, but I would say a big driving force for myself and my husband definitely is the cultural identity. We want them to have that. And whilst here in the West, they do have a Western identity, we don't want to lose that, knowing that we are also a generation which has been raised here. And whilst our parents were able to still provide, the culture in various forms, we also adopted a lot of Western cultures. And I'm just seeing here there's just certain things which are within the system and the framework, especially towards children, that I don't see towards their benefit. I don't see it towards their growth. I struggle to see how we're raising well-rounded children, nowadays. I think there's just so many things which are said against them. And I definitely think a big sense of it is identity. I'm in this society, we're raising Black children first. And that's what we don't want to do. Do you see what I'm saying? We want to raise children where they're not identified first off that. Whereas on the continent, it's not because they're Black. If they don't, as they grow, they don't receive certain opportunities. It's not necessarily, because the color of your skin. Over here, there's so many levels to which that racism is institutionalized, and we just feel it in so many subtle ways. Whereas I definitely feel on the continent, that's an aspect which they won't be dealing with as much. Yes, I know we have things like colonial mindsets, and yes, I know that's also within the educational systems, but ultimately there's an identity of culture. They'll get to speak the language, they'll get to be around other children, they'll get to understand the true values of what childhood is, whereas here I feel in the West, children aren't primed to be children anymore.
So would you say that, that's deep in terms of children not being allowed to be children? It's almost as if, I think maybe two sides. On the one hand, being kept as children in the sense of not being given the tools that they can actually use to help them thrive in their, as adults. But on the other hand, it's like, being forced to grow up sooner than, earlier than they're ready, being exposed to things that's a bit too much.
Absolutely. That's me. It's the ice cream man.
I wondered what it was. I was thinking, what is it?
Do you know what? Because in the UK, we're getting just a little bit of sunshine. It's like every evening, the ice cream man is out there, on the dot.
That is hilarious. Oh, fantastic. Okay, we'll leave that one. But coming back to the cultural the culture, and if I take it from the perspective is like, my recollection is, so being born and bred in the UK, I would say to a certain extent we were at least exposed to some of our culture, as in we were around family members who did speak a language, you know, the food, you know, and things like that. But the thing is, I remember so clearly being at university, and this whole thing about the identity, and you know, you have, you know, like in your first week, freshers week, first week, and you're getting to meet other students, and it's like, hi, I'm so and so, I'm from so, you know, and the contrasting experiences of meeting somebody and say, oh, where are you from? It's like, I'm from London. London. And then somebody saying, somebody of the same color as me, you know, saying, no, but where are you from?
Yes.
Because for our community, there's the understanding that people that look like us, we don't originate from UK, absolutely, US, or whatever. So I know, but where are you really from? You know, somebody else may say, what is your ethnic origin? So they're like, oh, okay. Or the response would be, oh, you mean, where are my parents from?
Yes.
So,
yes.
You know, you kind of dissociate almost. It's like, well, I was born here, but my parents are born this. That's what you mean. So then the next time you perhaps are asked that question, someone can ask you, okay, so where are you from? And now you think you're armed with the tools. Oh, yeah, I'm from Ghana, blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, it's a saying, or, you know, they'll start speaking to you. I'm like, I don't speak the language. It's like, oh, how do you not speak the language? How do you not speak the language? It's like, oh, you're not really Ghanaian or something. And then you're like, so where am I? You know, which one do I belong to?
No, do you know what, sis? You touched upon so many great points there, yeah. I totally get what you're saying regarding to, you get to a certain stage where, yeah, when people ask you from, oh yeah, I'm from London, I'm from North London, I'm from South London, and that's how you say where you're from. And it's true, even with uni, you will get there, and it's automatically like they're asking you, like people, you say, oh, where are you from? It's like, oh, I'm from Ghana. Yeah, I'm from Nigeria. And then people were like, that's how people identify themselves. Like, even when we don't have like the student uni like parties and stuff, you know, they have the parties and they shout out what country you're from, and you know, they say Ghana and everybody go crazy. So we like that definitely rings the bell. And I also know in terms of like family, even though we were brought up steeped in the culture, do you see what I'm saying? My dad was a diplomat for the Cameroon embassy. So he worked for the High Commission in the UK. And my mum, she's an African socialite anyway. So we've always been mixed with African, but sis, we were raised not speaking the language and speaking English. So even when we would go back home with certain things, straight away there was like this disconnect, because you say here in the UK you say, oh, I'm from Cameroon, and then someone will try to talk to you in a language, you'll be like, oh no, I don't speak it, and they look at you like, okay, cool. It's all those kind of things which we've grown up feeling. So even though you cannot tell me that I'm not Cameroonian, you cannot tell me I'm West African, you cannot tell me, you know, because I eat the food, I'm around it, the clothing. I was never that child growing up, oh, why do we have to wear African clothing? We love that. We grew up with that. Whereas as you got older, it almost became a phase now, oh, everybody wants to wear African prints. Do you see what I'm saying? When you were wearing it before it was cool, but I don't want our children to grow up with that disconnect, because if we're already growing with a disconnect and we don't speak the dialect, I'm having to learn the dialect now. Yeah, me too. Because if I can't speak it in any way, shape, or form, that's even another generational gap of disconnect that they will have, which is why for us it is important for them to be on the continent, to hear different languages, to hear different dialects, to understand that, you know, there's so many forms of spoken language, and children have the ability to learn so many varieties. So I think to myself, we can raise them here with the greatest concept of English to ride them through, with maybe additional language when they get to GCSE levels. But since we know the way language is taught to us in this system, it's not taught for you to go and do something with it. It's only if you get to like university level where you want to actually incorporate languages, be a translator, do something. That's when you would then think, okay, I want languages. But in Africa, they are naturally exposed to so many different dialects by the people they come across, because they may see another person that looks like them, but they're speaking a different language. That means the children start to pick up things differently. They'll just have a different connection and empathy towards people. So I think we underestimate that, because we're raising children here which aren't really connected to one another, sis. Not even that, but you're afraid to let your children be connected to other children. You're actually afraid to do it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are barriers, and it's good that you pick up on the fact that really it's the way I see it, it's like how do you get the best of both worlds? Because
Absolutely.
I think some people can look at this and think, oh, we want to be anti. Well, I would say so anti-London, anti-UK, whatever, So my personal journey, I'm like, oh no, I'm very grateful, fortunate for all the experience that we've had there and everything, because you do pick up things and like this is the next journey, next chapter of the journey. And for my children, because I have two boys, the other consideration is unfortunately how the society treats our boys. Because of the color of their skin and the stereotype. So I don't know to what extent, I'm not sure to what extent your children have already been here, visited and things, but I know that my boys being here, they instantly, apart from instantly having this kind of sense of freedom, like they can't, like literally they're flying around the place. There is something so reassuring and comforting being amongst your own, and it kind of being okay. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's not taboo. Yes. It's not cliquey. It's just, oh no, I'm in a country with my people. Oh, okay, cool. It's not a big deal.
Yes, it's not a big deal.
Sorry, sis. I think there's time delay, but yeah, no, I was just going to say, and I think, and I point that out because I think from our experience and people who don't look like us maybe don't appreciate that that would be a big difference for us, because being in a place where we are not the majority of the population, the different, like you said, the differences are more marked. And so it's almost like in Africa, where we are in a place where everyone looks like us, then that would be more akin to people who are born in England, Scotland, Wales, what have you, where they would naturally feel, oh, well, everybody looks like them. That's the equivalent of our experience. But we cannot have that in a place where the numbers are as they are.
No, we can't. We can't. And to be honest with you, sometimes it's like we're at a point where as Black people, whether we're Afro-Caribbean, whether we're African descent, wherever it is, I'm going to speak from my experience of the UK. There's a lot of injustices, there's a lot of unfairness, there's a lot of things that happen which you won't know until you experience it and you live in it. Now, from the outside, people can look at it and think, especially on the continent, that you're living a far better life. And yes, by standards of in terms of the home, your environment, certain things, of course, we live in relatively luxurious times. Do you see what I'm saying? Even at basic levels, compared to people on the continent where, when you really think about it, at the base level, having a roof over your head, food to eat, and clothing are some people's like every day, trying to do. So on that level, yes, we know there's certain benefits we get from having been raised here, having had our parents brought us here and given us certain opportunities to benefit from. But we're also in very different times. We're not in the same times to which our parents were in, So sometimes I think we have to be reflective and look at what is going on around us. And we could sit here and just say, well, because I was brought here and I was raised here and I've lived the majority of my life in the UK, it doesn't have to mean this is where I have to be, especially if I'm able to look at the society and the system and I'm able to say, well, okay, I'm not seeing the long-term benefits for me here. And I think that's okay to say that. Do you see what I'm saying? I'd rather say that and then my husband and I look and provide other opportunities for our children to be able to have that, than to sit here and complain in a system, to sit here and feel controlled in a system, to sit here and, become part of a system to which you're just not happy. It's not built for you to thrive. It's not built for you to benefit because we are the minority here. It is not our system. Do you see what I'm saying? A lot of the times I feel like sometimes we hear in the UK, it's almost like, it's like you're complaining to Hitler about Hitler's guards. Do you see what I'm saying? Or you're complaining to Hitler's guards about Hitler. It doesn't make sense. It is not our land. It is not our heritage. It is not our place. So as much as what we fight for equality for certain things, how can we be equal when this is not our land? So I would rather invest that level of mindset somewhere else, because otherwise all we're doing is teaching our children to be conditioned to live in a system, in a society where we are in economic slavery. There are opportunities for future advancements, especially now at the backdrop of Brexit, at the backdrop of obviously the pandemic. We're in the current economic collapse at the moment. Do you see what I'm saying? There's so many things that go on that when I look at, okay, I was my parents. Yes, the prospects of to the UK was a better prospect at that time. But now in the generation we are at, we are parents. We must look to what fits for us and this model. Now, for my husband and my family, family structure is very important. Very important. Do you see what I'm saying? I think every day about my children, what kind of education they're going to have, what kind of people they will mix with, what kind of, do you see what I'm saying? It's like, are they going to be allowed to be visionaries, to have hopes and dreams in a society that is geared and engineered to not provide them with the resources, to not provide them with opportunities, to not provide them, do you see what I'm saying? Where we are accustomed in this system, since we've all been told by it, as Black people, we must always work twice, triple times harder. We're not just taking it off our merit because we are good and we're capable. We don't do that. So essentially, I'm teaching my children to exist in a society, in a system where it's just always against them. Right. So there's that. I don't want that. My husband doesn't want that. So we're now left with, well, what do we do? Well, Africa. Now, there's been a large disconnect. I've gone back home. Do you see what I'm saying? But have I grown up back home? No, I haven't. Do you see what I'm saying? At the end of the day, is that what's going to stop me? Because no, it's not. We were now placed in a place, and as well through Blackmail TV, where it was a time to build connections. It was a time to really connect with Africa. It was a time to make sure we're not romanticizing Africa, just to say like the grass is greener, and we're going back because it's where we're supposed to be. There's so much building to be done. There's so much, you know, it says from what you're doing with your political aspirations. There's so much work on the ground that needs to be done. There's various reasons for why we need to go back. So for the children, our greatest tool is the cultural identity for them. It is a must, sis. Otherwise, I just worry about how, as they grow, what will they identify themselves? Are they going to be identifying themselves as African? Are they going to be identifying themselves as Cameroonian, Nigerian? Do you see what I'm saying? It's like, and if they identify themselves as British, what is that mindset they identify themselves with? So that's just where we're at.
Yeah, there was this whole I think it was an interview, or I think David Lammy, I think it was him that did. I don't know if you caught it on LBC radio. There's this whole conversation about whether he, as a Black man, can call himself an Englishman. You know, because from my perspective, that was like never an option, because an Englishman is Caucasian. But a British person can be of our, you know, Black, Asian, whatever it is. But it was very interesting to see the different, you know, the stance that he took. But like you say, when they say that, what identity do they take, with, you know, with that? And I think you bring out a very important point about the change in the times. When our parents came, well, definitely my mother, when she came to the UK from Ghana, it was at the time where you did everything you could to fit in. So at that time, it wasn't very often that you would hear of children with, you know, very African names. Although some of the Nigerians are very staunch in holding their, you know, their heritage. Some of the, I think the Ashantis, you know, some of them would hold on to their name. It was very rare. And it looks like now we've gone full circle, where it's almost like if you don't have a name that is, you know, like from somewhere else, it's like, what's wrong with you? You're you know, you're not cool. You're not in.
Absolutely.
You know, like you were saying about the culture, the African prince and everything coming out. So I think it definitely is that time where more awareness, more desire, and whereas that generation went there, then it's like their children now will come back, you know. And I think it's just exactly. No, exactly. And I think it just depends on the needs at the time, right? Like whatever's happening now, like you said, if our parents went to make a better life for themselves and what have you, and they've given their service and everything, and now the children think, okay, we've had this, thank you very much, we want to go and see what's over on this side. But like I think, like you said, I think the main thing is like, how do we help them to have a more broad, a more rounded, a more wholesome identity for themselves, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I agree with this. Absolutely. And in terms of what you're saying, how to help them have an identity, this is why we should be raising our children back on that continent, so that they are not like the false narratives. Even if I sit here and my daughter, when we do like internet research, you know, because I like her to see the visuals, you know. So even if you Google up Africa, we will still get the Serengeti images, we will still get the starving children, we will still get, you know, certain things. And what's the beauty now we're getting regarding content creators? They are really, really doing, as content creators, we're doing something different, because what we're doing is on the ground, in real time, we're showing a different view of Africa, which is not what we're given. And that's what, essentially, by raising our children constantly, we're giving them that extra exposure to that. And I think, because then if we don't, then we've adopted that mindset of that, then we are seeing ourselves as English. Do you see what I'm saying? Because I remember that argument regarding the whole David Lammy thing, and even though as much as what a lot of the things that David Lammy says, I do, you know, he's passionate, and like, you know, he's been writing for Tottenham for a while. But at the end of the day, he's conditioned to now be in an environment, a political environment, where look who he's around. He is, you know, he's not made to make the point to even say in England. Why would you even want to make that point? Do you see what I'm saying? That's just entrenched in colonial mindsets to say we have a right now to be here. Once again, complaining to Hitler's guards about Hitler and vice versa. We're engaging in these nonsensical conversations regarding rights. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Absolutely.
You don't have a right, but you do have a right in Africa to be there. Now, where even as diasporans are fighting for the right, even as the ones that want to go there, to be recognized as having a space there. Do you see what I'm saying? There's a lot of work to be done. There's a fight we have to do for that. Us transitioning, going on the ground, it's not readily accepted. But what we feel we're doing is, we are actually using what we were brought here to do, you know, to get the benefit of the system of education, to get the benefit of the healthcare, to get the benefit to be able to have employment at a better standard and wage and rate than what you might be getting on the continent in certain areas. We've had the benefit of that. But why are we not trying to use that now to take those same things and utilize them? It's almost like when we say we're going to Africa, God, you're going to Africa. Like you're just going to Africa, do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. People don't understand what's on the continent. And even for us in our journey, BLKMail TV, connecting and really, really getting more into building those connections, it's made such a big difference to our children. It really has, sis, in terms of how they see mommy and daddy operate now, in terms of the conversations they have, they hear us having now. It's just different. We speak more to them about it, and children at this age, they're so much more receptive. They're so much more receptive because you're showing that there's an opportunity for you to explore so many different places, and you can literally, whereas over here, we don't have that luxury for exploration. We really don't. Whereas in Africa, you have the ability to do that. We're quite excited about having a bucket list of taking family vacations across different African countries, mapping those things out, getting them excited to see the different ways you can travel, land, air, sea, do you see what I'm saying, across the continent. There's so much more stuff to which an experience that they can have, that even if we had gone back when we were early, we couldn't have had that experience because of how things are. But now we're in a great time of the internet. We're in a great time of even on the backdrop of the pandemic, having for the first time a lot of people to really take ownership of being with their children. Whereas a lot of the time here in the West, sis, they're in schools, like literally, what's the routine? You wake up early in the morning, to get them ready. Sometimes you're out by 7 to do the school run around the 8 o'clock time, then to then dash to work. Then, from when they get home, there's only a small window of opportunity. Some parents have their children in after school clubs, and I know because I used to run after school clubs.
I did, yeah.
I used to run these clubs, sis. So I know there's parents that require that extra little bit. So even being a teacher, running after school clubs, working with children and parents, I understand that even for it being it's like a daycare center. It's a place to which we house our children, and essentially other people are providing. They're shaping them, they're molding them, and we put so much emphasis because we think, well, if I can get them into a good school in a great catchment area, do you see what I'm saying? Or if I can throw more money in privately, then my child will get a better education. Okay, great. I can provide them an excellent education here in the West if we work extra hard, work 3 jobs, sacrifice everything, to which we see a lot of our own people doing in this community for the sake of better education. Okay, we could do those things, but then I'm going to then raise children which are going to be disconnected from their community, because not everybody in their community has had the ability to have that same education they have had. Not everybody has had the ability to have access to the same resources in their education as they have had. Not everybody has had the same opportunity to be challenged in their thinking or to apply critical thinking in their learning, because a lot of schools do not exercise and give room for children to apply critical thinking, and that is something to which I have the more I've gotten into it, I don't want to say an issue, because people say to me, oh, but you used to be a teacher. How come we don't want to put your kids in school? Or you used to be this. Why are you so disillusioned? And it's not that I want anything against anybody placing their children in school. I'm just saying that parents, there's still a duty of us to be the first primary educators, regardless of where they are. Do you see what I'm saying? So when I look at what kind of education do we want them to have, we want them to have a heavily steeped cultural identity education. Just what I'm saying, we're placing that at the top of the bar for us, because essentially we will teach our children to read and write. We will teach them, but raising on the continent, we will teach them a historical and a cultural knowledge of their continent, as opposed to raising in the West and teaching them about World War I, World War II. Do you see what I'm saying? And the same European history to which we're given. And I did history at GCSEs. I did history at A-level, sis. You're still given European history. I remember looking in the textbook, and when we were covering like wars in Africa and, see where things like that crossed over, they gave you like two pages on, slavery and their part. And then the whole textbook was dedicated to European history. So even if you think you know about history, no, you've been taught to just know about their version of European history, and it's not that. And I do not wish to replicate teaching my children that. We have a lot of Black scholars here in the UK which are fighting tooth and nail to introduce different literature books to our children at all stages of education, because we're like, it's now, once again, with the internet, we cannot pretend that this information is not available anymore. So why are we still teaching children from textbooks of updated information? Why are we still teaching our children false narratives in textbooks? But because we put them in schools, that's by default what they will learn. And if we're then, because of work, having not the room to then rear them and educate them within the home setting, because it's not easy. You don't have the time, you're tired. Lately, if you have a household to run, there's so many things where you take your eye off the ball of the children very easily in the system. And I just feel in Africa, there's a better cultural identity, there's a better sense of family, better sense of welcoming. Do you see what I'm saying? I just know that in the compound where we will be, our children can easily play with the people next door, because it's different. There's a different mindset there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, and I think you touched on it earlier about the fact that it's not necessarily just that the grass is greener. We've got a lot of work to do. The education thing, it's funny, because I mean, I grew up knowing or learning and hearing from other people that actually, when it comes to basic education, so primary school, secondary school, let me just speak about Ghana. But at that level, it's very good. But when you get to the higher, the tertiary and thing, that's when people now leave to get the other kind of, do you understand? Because I still remember going through school. I did pretty well at school, but I was saying to somebody just the other day that, for instance, I didn't properly learn or understand English grammar until I started learning French. because then you have to do that. What is it? Do you see what I mean? And I see all that just to say that, so there are the issues for us with what is taught, what we learn. We're talking about the UK, but what we learn in the UK and how useful is that to us to support us in developing, growing, having like a successful life. And the thing is, that's twofold, because my personal view, that's a whole nother conversation, is that when you look at the education system overall, I would say ask that question, regardless of skin color. Ask that question: how much is the education system, the curriculum that they teach and everything, how much does that really prepare our children to have a success, to grow? It doesn't. And you mentioned the phrase critical thinking. How often does it allow them to actually challenge them, get them to ask questions, get them to speak out, get them to... Now, I'm not tarring the whole education system with the same...
of course not.
But do you know what I mean? And definitely over here, just to finish on this side, the challenge then becomes that although we'd say in the UK or in the diaspora, it's very clear that we rarely learn about our story over there, even on the continent, we mustn't forget that we still have lots of areas that are heavily still influenced by colonialism, and therefore we're actually learning things here that you can still go and learn in the UK. So that we have to add to the work that we need to do, that on the continent we are still actually learning about the things that matter to us most, affect us most,
No, absolutely, sis. Absolutely. I fully agree 100, definitely.
So tell me a bit more about, because you touched on it. I just wanted to touch what you're saying about the homeschooling. It's something that I've always said, if I can get myself together, the sport and everything, I would love to do that, because I have two very different children. One's an academic, like a scholar. He's been into his letters and numbers since before he could walk, like he's a mathematician. I call him a mathematician. My other one, I call him nature boy. Like, there's nothing worse than you could do to him. Then I still remember his first day picking him up after reception class, and him saying that was the worst day he'd ever had, because he had to sit there. He'd rather be out climbing trees and all this kind of, he likes to do stuff. So how do we accommodate? So I would like to homeschool, and at some point. But how do you, like, what do you have to say about that? Like, for your, if that's a preference of yours, or where do you stand on that?
I'll be very honest. Homeschool was accidental, in the sense of I applied. We applied to put our daughter for reception in a school, and where we were, we placed her into school. Since I'm coming from a teaching background, I check Ofsted reports, I check, those kind of things to gauge my decision. And, I went and did multiple visits to check the schools, check them at different times of the day to see the flow of the teaching, all those kind of things. So we made the application. And I remember when we got back, when it was the time to get back the results from the school, she didn't get any. She didn't get any of the places we applied for. No, not even the ones closest radius. And what they did was, this was in Birmingham, so for us it was a new experience, because obviously I've grown up in a London borough education system. So in having my own children and putting her in Birmingham, it was like they put her in like a token black school. They put her in a random school somewhere that wasn't even that close to us. But then when I was checking statistics of the school, things like that, this school just was poorly performing in every single area, other than the fact of, they're not hitting their quota for ethnic children, and they're trying to up that. So I was like, oh, they're trying to use my child as the token black child. Do you see what I'm saying? They're trying to shift it to this school to fill up the ethnic quota. But what really troubled me was the fact that when I read the Ofsted report, and they got a low Ofsted report, and they said Ofsted's actual recommendations was that children struggle to apply their learning in school outside of school. And I just thought to myself, pardon? So I'm going to be sending my child to how many hours of the day to school, And essentially the school's failing to a point where she will not be able to apply the knowledge she has learned in school outside of school. That was worrying me. So I was at that point then, I sat with my husband and I was like, you know what, babes, I'm like, this, I don't know. We had to have that talk of, and I'm really very, very fortunate because he's quite like, same thing, education system. He's like, Ush, listen, you've been educating other people's kids for years. I'm sure you could do the same. Do you know what I'm saying? But I was a little bit apprehensive. So I started going out, feeling out some homeschooling groups and things like that. I was adamant she wasn't going there, but I put an appeal in to, the borough to say like, no, I don't want this school. I want this school. But I thought, let's just look into it. So in the end, I kind of went into it not full with the wholeheartedness because I thought I was also coming from a very structured, teaching background, in the sense of, and I was like, oh, can I apply that same structure at home? Is it going to be that? But we fell into homeschooling just really lovely because what essentially allowed us to do was it just allowed me to have that one-to-one time with your own child. Do you see what I'm saying? I realized that homeschooling wasn't just about, it was about their interests. And I'm quite adaptive in my parenting. So I go, a lot of the time, we will go off her interests. And that's what the beauty of homeschool allows you to do. So when you have two children which are quite separate, it allows you to cater for their separate needs, but you can always apply learning to everything. And that's what I think people don't seem to realize. Now, so what we will do is I made sure I was that soccer mom in as many groups as we can, because I'm also where social interaction is something I didn't want her to miss out on. So now that meant that put the pressure on me to ensure that I was always checking for the groups, the this, the that, always looking for ways where she could socially interact with other people. But what you find with homeschooling is, yes, you want kids to interact, but then you realize you're in this environment where, parents have to interact also. Because a lot of the times in schools, you leave the kids at the school gates and stuff, you don't really interact with parents. But with homeschooling, when you're in like an activity for 2 hours, you're with another parent, you have to communicate, and I'm just a natural person in that way. So those aspects to homeschooling, it tests you as a person, also your social skills. You think they're just teaching the children, but it tested my timekeeping skills, it tested my organizational skills, but there were also so many beautiful aspects to it because I'm very creative, I'm very hands-on. So like I said, I was able to plan, our daughter's curriculum, and then we had my second. Now, what you said about having two totally different children, yes, we have that experience. Do you see what I'm saying? We have my eldest, she's just naturally courageous, wants to try different things. Do you see what I'm saying? But when she really has to sit down to really be studious or, really apply thought and effort, her concentration is she's just away with the fairies. And she's very creative like that. And I'll be honest with you, sis, if I'm really honest with you, sometimes you're looking at her and you're just like, she reminds me too much of myself. And then you're like, okay, how am I going to out-train the me out of my child? Do you know what I mean? And then we've got our other daughter, and she's always been, she loves the numbers, she loves the reading, she soaks up the learning, she wants to learn, she thrives off like she will says very quickly, so if I do this and do this, I get praise. So she will do this and this every single time because it gets her two totally different children. And now we've got our son. Sis, he doesn't want to hold the pen. At this age, the girls were reading, they were doing different things. He doesn't want to turn the book. He doesn't want to, do you see what I'm saying?
Oh gosh, that was my youngest, yeah.
So I've had to find ways of his interest to incorporate the learning. Do you see what I'm saying? So we were trying something I clocked very early on. Initially, he didn't want to hold the pen. So, with the apps and technology, they're able to, do the tracing, but I'm also children need to still master their fine-hand coordination skills.
The dexterity, yes, exactly.
The dexterity. And this is one of the things which a lot of the times in technological age, children with the swiping, the certain bits and pieces, they're not having the feel of the book. They don't have the patience to turn. They don't, things like that. So whereas initially to get his interest going, we gave a lot of app-based things because he's like, with technology, he gets it. So that extended the learning. But then we got to a point where we're like, well, we don't want him to use that as the crutch, and then he will only learn in this medium. Then we had to adapt him again. Then we create back to, no, we're going to have to do books. But he doesn't do workbooks. he doesn't do workbooks, whereas with the girls, workbooks worked. We were able to do things like that. He's much more visuals. He needs the counters. He needs, even if we're counting, we need to make the noise. We need to do the clapping. We need to do some, and even then he needs it in short bursts, because when he doesn't want to do it anymore, he'll start playing silly beggars. Then I just know, okay, we're done.
Yeah, no, it's true.
And you've got to just give room for that, because you will plan for your day to go like this. And so sometimes you get like one piece of learning done from that day. Or you could adapt your day in terms of taking the children out and about. At the moment, we're talking about money, we're talking about currency, we're talking about, transactions. So the children, they go into the bank, they know about taking that money, they understand what the card does, how it's linked to your bank account when they go in. A lot of these things are all learning opportunities. From the moment we step outside, there's always an opportunity to ask them to read as many things as they can sound out. Or let me know all the vowels you see. Let me know the consonants you see. Let me, you can do memory games. Remember something and try to remember 3 things. Hold it in your memory, and on the way back, I'll ask you and see if we can remember those things. Memory recall. There's so many things you can do just in an everyday opportunity where you don't have to just make it about I'm sitting down with you or doing that. If that works for you, if the child responds to that, great. But we work off a growth mindset principle, so letting children know their minds can expand, they're sponges, they can take things in. If you're taking something and you're not processing it, let's stop, let's process it in a different way. If you can't, let's leave it. We can come back to it. Let's switch it to something you do have an interest in. So definitely, I would say homeschooling is something which you look at the skills you have as a person and train those into your children. Let them learn those things. And essentially, you're giving them actual life applicable skills. Because above everything, sis, I want my children to have life applicable skills. I need them to have that. I need them to have that. And our children, they are ordered, they know when they finish eating. Each person has their plate. They're each responsible for washing their own plate, their own cup, and putting it away. Do you see what I'm saying? Because at this age of responsibility, we have the benefit that with our generation, different responsibilities weren't really expected of us as it was the generation before. So once again, cultural identity, I'm worried about raising children in a muddle-colored environment where your child at 12, that's when you're expecting them to clear the table. Do you see what I'm saying? When I know I was clearing the table and doing certain things in a different way, but now we're raising children where, and I find myself praying to that, where you're doing it for them, you're picking up for them, they're able to do things, but you're just doing it for them. And then you're saying you're working harder.
Exactly. You expect them to know how to do it all of a sudden, But I think one of the most important things there is that it's not all about book knowledge. And I think sometimes that's the trap we fall into with this education. There's been a period of time where my children haven't been to school, but they're doing, various other things, family members. Of course, everybody should maybe have a right, and the opportunity, but no, have the right to go to school. But like you said, is it going to school for going to school's sake, or what is it that they're learning? If they're rather learning, how to, if you like, keep the house, the responsibilities, how to maintain, that's something they're going to lead when they go up. Yes, it's not going to necessarily make them the CEO if that's what they want to be. But I think we need to have that balance, because we see that when we get older, the education, especially for in our community, it actually doesn't help us. We're so qualified. I read some statistic in the States where it said, like, per capita or something, Nigerians have the most qualifications, like and it's like, but is that helping them? You could be the most qualified person and be unemployed. Like,
this is all the time it is. And this is what we see in the UK. We had a lot of family members where they're highly educated, they come over there, they're highly experienced, they're professionals, and sis, they are also cleaners, they are also working care homes, they're also doing things, because you have to, here in this UK, sustain your living at all costs. And obviously we have continental commitments to family members and things like that. So it's not easy. But I think our family, from our parents' generation, it was everything education. Education was seen as the means to better yourself and to that next extension of colonialism. You see what I'm saying? Where you could thrive at this level. Whereas in Africa, you experience colonialism, but it gets like there's a glass ceiling, you can only get so far. So hence why a lot of our people, they go out, because they know the same level of field which I'm in Africa, if I can be in that same field in the UK, I get exponentially more money. So when you're looking in terms of survival, in terms of better outcomes, of course it makes more sense. But what we're having on our continent is brain drain. You know, they're taking the best of our resources, they're taking the best of those of our mindsets, whether it's colonial or not, because we are very critical thinkers in Africa, you know?
Yes.
And I think we get over here and we lose that because we're not thought to critically analyze things. We're just not. Now, if we are falling prey to this now, we're not teaching our children to have that either. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of work to be done. The more awareness we raise, the more people know that, yes, Africa is, for us, we say the African Revolution. There is a real revolution taking place, and some people just don't understand it. They don't want to connect with it. They're so disconnected from it, and that's fine. But for those, if you're really looking about your children, their future, in the UK, we're back at the point where our children's children will be in debt, sis. That is the statistics to which I lead. That is the extent to which the recession to which we're going in and how bad things are. Depression even. My children's children, that's like my daughter. So my granddaughter will only start to see economic prosperity. Sis. We've been conditioned for generational wealth because our families of our Africans come over using education as a means to be then looked after. Survive. You're raising children to then in turn look after you, whereas we are raising our children to not have to look after us. Do you see what I'm saying? If I'm trying to go live on the continent, I'm not going there with the mindset my child's looking after me. Do you see what I'm saying? We're going with the concept of, we're not trying to birth the mindset of like trust fund babies. Do you see what I'm saying? Where the things to which I'm doing, they will benefit. You know, if anything happened to us today, they will benefit of legacy. But we live in a Western system where certain people, that is what they do. You see them. Everything is kept generationally in their wealth. But yet we don't have that. But we have education. We have professions. We have this. We have that. We don't have resources. We don't have means. Yes, I'm not disillusioned. Africa, there's a lot of structural things which are not in place. But we're ready to do the work. We're ready to raise our children on the continent, understanding there's a work to be done. We're raising them to understand that in their lifetime, they could be doing things to impact what we started, you know, and that for me, I'm ready to take that risk.
Absolutely. And the resources are there. That's the other thing we're teaching. The resources are there. We just have to find a way to rechannel them back for the benefit of the Africans who live there, rather than the whole world and the mother.
We have to funnel it. We have to funnel our skills. We have to funnel our resources. We have to funnel our mindsets. If the mindset is to funnel everything back to Africa, even as we're here now, we will be on the continent, you know, shortly, God willing. But even still, prior to that, our mental prep work has been to make the investment onto the continent. You don't always have to be there to be able to reap from the benefits, to set things in place for your children to reap from it. You can say, okay, I'm not going to be there, but I can still start establishing things, businesses, which is for my children, which can grow, because Africa is growing. Africa's booming. You know, Africa's middle class is rising. There's resources there, there's wealth there, and it's so untapped. It's so untapped, whereas over here, things are depleted. You're trying to get resources from a depleted source. It doesn't make sense. You have to work much harder, harder. And even when you get something, you're going to be getting less. How about we're willing to put in that hard work still on the continent? Do you see what I'm saying? Where we can actually get greater rewards. And the greater rewards, once again, is the children. Let's stop being selfish. A lot of us have lived a good life. Since I know you've lived and had a good benefit to certain things of which our parents have provided us the upbringing. Do you see what I'm saying? But even you are aware that you want something greater for your children, you know? And even though you've been less than 7 months, I am sure your children, they have more peace. They have more joy. They receive more sunshine. And that
Yeah.
affects children. Trying to get the kids up
It
in the
affects
winter
us
time to
all.
go to school, sis. It's, do you know what I mean? It's like you don't want to get up, they don't want to go, but sometimes you're forcing them because
Yes.
that's just the pattern you're in. So
That's what we have to, yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. Sister Ursula, thank you so
it's
much.
okay. You know, I'll
We
talk your
covered
ear off.
everything. Yeah, no, we can cover so much. We'll come back again, absolutely. But yes, I hope. Thank you to the viewers that have been watching. Peace, Medina. Whether you're watching on live or on replay, please do share the broadcast. You know, you never know who it could benefit. We thank
Yes.
you to our supporters, partners. Speak Up and Empower Africa. And yeah, join us again next week at 5 p.m. GMT, that's 6 p.m. UK. But for now, Sister Ursula and I guess we wish you a good evening. And Sister Ursula, thank you for joining me again.
No, thank you for having me, sis. Thank you. Thank you. It was a blessing and an honor.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Take care.